Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sandra Vidrio, and I am Business Development Officer here with the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation. Our guest speaker for today is City of Fresno Representative Rodney Horton. Rodney will be sharing with us the safety guidelines and protocols that authorized businesses should be following during COVID-19. After the presentation, we will have the opportunity for a Q&A session. As we get started here, I would like to share with you the option on using the chat box. If you are accessing the webinar using a laptop, you can simply click on the chat icon located on your screen. If you're using a tablet, please select the participant icon, and on the left side, you will see the chat feature. And if you're accessing through a mobile device, please tap the More option on your screen to access the chat feature. Please send us your questions throughout the presentation. I also want to remind you that this webinar is currently being recorded and all participants will be receiving a copy. I would like to recognize the following sponsors that allow our organization to provide these weekly webinars to our business community. Thank you to Bank of America, Bank of the West, Chevron, Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco, Donagy Sales, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, and Union Bank for your support. Here is the agenda for today's presentation. I would like to share with you about the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation. We are a nonprofit organization in the Central Valley with the mission to promote education and self-sufficiency by fostering entrepreneurship. At this time, our organization is currently assisting businesses virtually through our technical assistance program, our weekly webinars, and including our microloan program. In addition, we have our newest program that launched in May, Womanpreneur, and it is an 8-session program designed to help women entrepreneurs grow their business using online marketing tools and develop a strategic marketing plan. To learn more about our programs or to participate in Womanpreneur, please call us at 559-222-8705 or visit our website to sign up for our weekly webinars. And I would now like to welcome our guest speaker for today, Rodney Horton. And so I will be making Rodney our co-host. So 1 second, please.
Okay, Sandra, can you hear me?
Yes, so you can hear him and we can see the screen. Perfect.
Okay. All right, perfect. And so you see the PowerPoint screen? Good. I just wanted to confirm.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, awesome. Well, first I'd like to thank everyone for allowing me to present this morning to you all. Again, my name is Rodney Horton. I'm the Housing and Neighborhood Revitalization Manager within the City Attorney's Office Code Enforcement Unit. So our unit principally has been enforcing the emergency order since COVID started. And so, I think that this is we're finding ourselves in very interesting times, having to deal with this, and so we're entering a period of what I would consider to be a new normal, at least for some time until we can get this thing under control. But I'm going to be sharing with you just a brief presentation on reopening businesses in the midst of the global pandemic that has really changed our lives, and certainly the livelihood, and has certainly impacted, I should say, the livelihood of many of the members within the foundation. And so, residents have been basically staying home and sheltering in place since the city's shelter in place order went into effect on March 19th. To some degree, businesses were forced to close. All businesses that were deemed to be non-essential did close, and those businesses included bars, nightclubs, hair salons, barbershops, tattoo parlors, and gyms, to give you an example. And the goal was basically to discourage the congregation of large groups of people in an area that where they shouldn't be. The goal was to actually shelter in place, and and that's basically what had occurred. And so during the shelter in place order, essential businesses were allowed to operate. And essential businesses were those that were deemed to be important to the health and safety of a person and their family. And those examples of essential businesses were typically included transportation, or logistics, and that was our essential supply lines to get goods to grocery stores. Grocery stores themselves were considered to be essential. Hardware stores, gas stations, restaurants with takeout only, and of course medical facilities. So now we've kind of pushed past the shelter in place order a little bit, and we've started to now open up, and we're opening up in a phased approach. And we're opening businesses that were once considered to be non-essential. And here in the city of Fresno, there was essential, non-essential, and then as we began the reopening phase back in April, a third category was created, which was called authorized businesses. And it allowed certain businesses to reopen first. An example of that would be the furniture stores. So those were one of the retail stores that were allowed to open first. Since that time of the authorized business category coming into place, we've eliminated the essential, non-essential category, and we now have an authorized, non-authorized category. And so that's basically happened on May 26th. And the city's emergency shelter, or shelter in place order rather, ended on the 26th of May, and we went under the state's emergency order, which is still in place. Businesses are mostly open, minus event venues, sports events with a live audience, and of course nightclubs. Those are the areas where you will find a large gathering of people. And so that's where we currently are now. The goal of the guidelines is basically vital to protect the health of the public, which includes the businesses, employees, and customers. And the goal is to slow the spread of the virus and keep the economy open. The last thing anyone wants to do is reverse course and close businesses as a result of infections and hospitalizations spiking at a high rate. We're witnessing what's going on in Texas right now, where the governor has basically placed a freeze on reopening as their numbers are spiking through the roof. Unfortunately, Texas is one of the states where they were the last to close and the first to open, very similar to the state of Florida, which is also experiencing a spike in numbers. So we're very fortunate in that regard, that our numbers are not jumping through the roof as those two states. So that's the goal of the guidelines, is to make sure that we continue to keep our numbers down as much as possible, and to ensure the health and safety of those that are going to patronize your business. Our goal is, again, flatten the curve. That's still a common theme and a common goal. And so what we are experiencing with the Fresno County Department of Public Health is general health and safety guidelines, which is very key. Some of those guidelines particularly pertain to not allowing sick employees to come to work, maintaining social distancing, which is at a minimum at least 6 feet of space between individuals, frequently disinfecting the workplace, such as bathrooms, break rooms, and other common areas. And of course, and most importantly, making sure that employees and customers wear protective facial coverings, and that would certainly include a mask. I know that that's something that some people are generally apprehensive about, but it is, according to the science and the data, wearing a mask does help this fight the spread of COVID-19, which is a novel virus, something that this country has not particularly dealt with at this level. And so our CDC is learning more and more about this virus. If you remember early on, when this first occurred, it was thought that warm weather would kill the virus. And here we are entering the heat of summer, the middle of summer, and the numbers are spiking. So as we learn more about this virus, we're starting to see how we can actively combat it. And so these general health and safety guidelines get us to that point. The city's guidelines are spelled out in the emergency order 20-17. And the guidelines are further spelled out under Appendix A. And I presented a copy, or shown a copy here. And you can see, especially if you go to fresno.gov, you can see the emergency order and the social distancing protocol that's required for each business. And you can also see that the actual appendix needs to be posted in a very visible place within the business. And you'll probably find this Appendix A posted in many restaurants and retail establishments. This is basically the business's commitment to the public that they will follow the applicable safety guidelines. And as you see on the screen, some of those guidelines are disinfectant and related supplies are available to all employees at the following locations. So they would spell that out there. Hand sanitizer, effective against COVID-19, is available to all employees at the following location. So it's spelled out for the public and the employees where they can go. To actually use the hand sanitizer. Soap and water will be available for all employees. So there's the measures to protect employees' health, and there's the measure to protect crowds from gathering. And so whatever is applicable, the business would then check that applicable guideline. It's their commitment to both the public and their employees about the measures that they will take to ensure that these guidelines are being met. And so as we move on in the presentation, I had mentioned earlier that we fell under the state emergency order. And with that, we're principally under the County Department of Public Health. And so they have a website that's totally dedicated to COVID-19. And it's co.fresno.ca.us /departments/public-health/COVID-19. I'm going to put that in the text box later on in the presentation so that everyone has access to that website. It's very vital that everyone get a chance to go there, look at the guidelines that's applicable to your industry, because it will spell out what is exactly required and what you need to do. So that's a separate process. Again, it's required under the Fresno County Department of Health. The County Department of Health, again, has this special website dedicated to COVID-19. And they also have the industry guidelines, which is a range of businesses. So for the purpose of today's presentation, what I've done is focused on bars, wineries, brew pubs, and what they need to do prior to reopening. The core thing that businesses would need to do that fall into this category would need to complete the COVID-19 operating procedures form, which is again on the county's department public health's website, and then they can submit that form to Environmental Health Division. And the form can be emailed or faxed at the number that is provided on the screen. And again, the public health website has a ton of information on guidelines for every kind of business that is in the process of reopening. And again, that would include expanded personal care services such as nail salons, massage therapy, um, any kind of cosmetic work. All of those facilities would follow those personal care services reopening guidelines. There are also guidelines for the family entertainment centers, and those would include like miniature golf as an example, that they would follow those guidelines. There's body art facilities, again, that would be the tattoo, body piercing. There's procedures for that as well. Again, as you can see on your screen, bars, brew pubs, wine and beer tasting rooms. So you can kind of get an idea of the guidelines that are essential, and some of it mirrors exactly the city's Appendix A requirement. So we have the city's emergency order, which is still in effect, and so that's why Appendix A would need to be posted. But you also have the state and county's emergency order, and the business would need to complete those operational or operating procedures form, and then send it into Fresno County Department of Public Health. There's standards for dine-in restaurants. Restaurants were always essential since the very, very beginning, but the dine-in portion is what the business would be responsible for making sure that they are in strict conformance with the operating procedures. And again, that would also include filling out the procedures form. You will see throughout Fresno County, since we're talking about dine-in restaurants, some restaurants will not be able to meet those guidelines. And so some restaurants have decided to only allow people to order their food and then, of course, take it out. So they will still operate at that takeout level or capacity for their restaurants, because they either still want to follow, or they're still unsure about the safety piece, and don't want to expose their employees to COVID-19 or the potential of being exposed to COVID-19. So they still have that takeout capacity. You're not required to have dine-in in your restaurant, but if that is something you would like to do, you can certainly. So it's not uncommon to see a business not having dine-in services at this time. It could be that they are not able to meet the operating procedures, or it could be that they do not want to expose themselves or their employees to COVID-19. There's also guidelines on the County Department of Public Health for retail and shopping malls. So you'll be able to see that on the website, and it's the requirements and guidelines are basically in tandem with the state of California's Department of Public Health. And you'll basically find throughout all of the states, the departments of public health at the state level and certainly at the county level are the ones that are really driving the bus when it comes to reopening and the procedures for reopening. And our goal, again, is not just to reopen, but it's to also stay open. And so that's why we have these operating procedures in place at both the state, county, and local level. And these procedures were done in tandem with medical experts that are familiar with what would need to happen in order to ensure the safety of the businesses, employees, as well as the customers. Again, we want to stay green. We want to stay green on operating businesses, not just within the city, but certainly within the county and the state. And we don't want to be a Texas or Florida that has to stop reopening So we're currently, I believe, in in the middle of 2 and 3 phases on reopening, and so we're pretty close to having most of the businesses in the city of Fresno to be fully open. So our goal is to continue on that path in a safe manner. What I'd like to do is flip to our the county's website just so everyone can see it. So please bear with me for just a moment. Okay. Sandra, can you see the screen for the website? Okay. All right, awesome. So I'm on the county's website, and as you can see here, all of the guidelines are available in numerous languages. Um, the county also has the most updated numbers as far as the total cases in Fresno. So as you can see, our numbers have been spiking quite a bit. We're well over 4,000. Interestingly enough, when we started preparing for this webinar as a unit, we were only at uh, about 28 or 2,900, and so now we're over 4,000. And so as you can see, they have all of the data there. But as you go further down on the website and also to the side, you'll get the guidance for faith-based organizations, since churches are now allowed to open, youth and school-based sports, fireworks stand guidance. You can see all of the guidance for any of the applicable industries that pertain to the members of the foundation. And you'll also see the new businesses that will be opening soon. Again, I had talked about those earlier in the presentation. The expanded personal care service centers. This would all be on the county's website. And if you have any questions for the Department of Public Health, their number is 559-600-3200. And so with these guidance and resources, there's also even more information down at the bottom that provides key information. Medical providers, they have their information and support, funeral homes and cemeteries, drive-in and public events. Again, the website is loaded with a bunch of resources that would help you as you move toward reopening your business in the midst of this pandemic. And so if you bear with me, I'm going to copy and paste this into the box so that everyone would be able to see this information. So just bear with me for just a moment. Okay, Sandra, I'm having a little bit of trouble finding the
chat feature. No worries. I actually went ahead and I copied it. I typed it into the group in the chat box, so participants should be able to have that form.
All right, awesome. All right, I was like, I'm having issues finding that. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the final piece to the slide is to answer any questions that anyone would have. As we move forward. And so I'm open for any questions. So I don't know, Sandra, if you have those questions or.
No participants have submitted any questions yet, but I do know one of the questions that were received here at the foundation was in regards to the temperature checking. I know there's certain industries, right, where they have to keep a log of the temperature, but does that apply to every industry, or which are the industries that should be? Um,
That's a great question. I would check with the Department of Health for a couple of reasons. The number one reason is, as far as keeping a log, I don't know what the implications are as it pertains to HIPAA. So I'm not 100% sure on that. I would check with the Department of Health as well as the individual industry guidance.
Perfect. And then I know there's also been some businesses, right, that oh, perfect. That are, I think one of the questions is, following these guidelines, but and so in a nutshell, it's like how to avoid, a citation. And so what advice of peace would you give to those businesses?
The big piece, and I know it's a pain for individual businesses to actually have to fight with people, but the big piece is just constantly enforcing the guidance on your customers. And I know that puts businesses into a very sticky situation because you have some people that will say, no, I'm not going to wear a mask, or they will say I have a health issue and I cannot wear a mask. And so you're at a point where you're trying to figure out, does this person legitimately, like, it puts businesses in a tough spot. But we generally get a good amount of complaints from folks about lack of social distancing and customers and employees not wearing masks. And so the key thing is just to follow the guidelines, and that will prevent any kind of warning or citation. Generally, what we try to do here in code, because we know that people are probably at their wits' end. They're just they're just fit to be tied at this point. This has been going on since March, and here we are going into July. So I understand the frustration that people have, but we do get a considerable amount of complaints that businesses are not um, uh, observing and enforcing the social distancing guidelines that we have basically mirrored through the CDC. And so that's, our goal is to really educate. And if we have to keep going out to a business, then we will move to the next phase, which is noticing, and then we would move to the next phase, which is citation. It's not something we want to do. It doesn't put us in the best situation, but at the same time, we are in emergency um, situation here. We're under emergency order. And so the city, through the code enforcement unit, has basically been the only agency within the city, the entire organization that is the city of Fresno's government, that has been enforcing the emergency order. And so what we have really tried to do is focus on educating the business. We have been very proactive in going out and educating people. Our inspectors have been out providing authorized business stickers to all the businesses that are allowed to open. We have a website a hotline number. Basically, you can call our number, 559-621-8400, and get put on a list for masks. And so our inspectors have been delivering masks to businesses just so that they can provide those masks to an employee or customer when they fail to show up at the location without a mask. And so we have been doing anything and everything in our ability to educate and be proactive at the education level so as to avoid noticing and citation. So that's our goal is always compliance. Our goal is not to find people in violation and then issue a fine. That is not our intention. Our intention is compliance, especially during this troubling time. Again, we don't want to go backwards. We do not want to be like Texas or Florida. We want to stay in the green and continue reopening. And so I got a really good question from Ricardo. and he wanted to know when we would be able to open up the nightclubs. And I think that that's a good question. I'm not 100% sure since we went under the state. It's all at the discretion of the state and coordination with the counties. What Governor Newsom has been doing is allowing counties to go to the next step and reopen a particular segment of the private sector, and then counties have the ability to open them or open them at a later period. For example, the nail salons were allowed to open, I think, the week of the 12th or 16th, and Fresno County put a pause on that until actually today, June 26th. So that's to give you an example. So I'm not 100% sure when nightclubs would be open. I think that Ricardo's question is very good, and I would hope that whoever is watching this webinar and is wondering the same thing about nightclubs would take a lot of caution in making sure that nightclubs, one, can open, and that two, there are industry guidance for nightclubs, because I wouldn't want an establishment to open, have issues that would go beyond code enforcement. So the state has threatened any business that has a liquor license that's not following the shelter or the emergency order or state shelter in place order. They've been, holding the liquor license over the establishment head, basically. And so I wouldn't want an establishment to jeopardize their liquor license by prematurely reopening. And so to go to the next question, Rosa had asked, do you know when courts will be open? Not 100% sure when the courts will be open. I apologize, I don't have that information. That would be something I would check with the state on as to when that will happen. Ramona had asked, are you going to the businesses, checking on them, making sure they are following rules? It's a great question. Yes, because our goal is to educate. So we do have 3 teams of inspectors. The first team has provided over 3,000 authorized stickers to businesses, as well as a copy of the emergency order. We have another team that has been going out and providing masks to businesses that are on the list. And while I'm at it, I'm going to put the number that you can call for your business to be added to the list to receive a supply of masks. So you can call the 8400 number. Again, it's 59621-8400. You can call and have your business added to the list to receive free masks for your employees and customers. And you can provide those to any individual that comes to your establishment without wearing a mask. You can give that to them. So we have been very proactive, and we have a team that's going out, another team that's going out as well, and doing proactive enforcement. And so when we see a business that's not complying with the emergency order, we try to talk to the owner or the manager to really get the education piece underway. And then if we have to keep going out, especially receiving complaints, then we would go to the next phase of enforcement. But again, our number one goal is strictly compliance. And so I'm going to move to Dora's question. Is there someone who is inspecting if businesses are ready to open, therefore they will not end up with fines? There are, especially early on, that's a really good question, Dora. Early on, there were individuals that did open that were not supposed to. And so I'm sure as you watch the news, you're aware of what those particular businesses, who those businesses were, and what the issue was. We haven't been 100% proactive. We've been solely reactive on that, meaning we would get a complaint. So early on, there were complaints of retail establishments being open, and so we would act upon those. Again, it started with education and noticing before it went to citations. And some businesses, just continue to stay open, and so they continue to get cited. So that was the core issue there. But for the most part, our economy is nearly open, save for special events, venues, special events themselves, like the Fres Yes Fest, which is pretty big here in Fresno, or any other large event that's pretty known here in the city. So by and large, safe from from those items. Most of the city is the economy, or I should say, here in the city and county are pretty much allowed to open, except for those other industries. And Lorraine asks, please address what the county is doing to educate the public on their responsibility to adhere to face covering and social distancing. It looks like we have been inspected. We have. How do we get the sticker? Okay. So I think we ran out of stickers, to be quite honest, Lorraine, so I do apologize about that. We had about 3,000 of those that we have provided, and I think we're completely out, and I do apologize. I think we got them from Council President Arias's office, so I can check and on that and follow up with Sandra as far as the authorized sticker. But the sticker was just a really cool feature that allowed people to, really let their customers know, hey, we're here, we're open, and we're ready to get down to business. I'm not quite sure what the county is doing to educate the public on their responsibility. I would hope that the public themselves would take this virus very seriously. It is novel, so we don't have a vaccine for it. The information we initially heard about the virus is totally different now. So we know for sure it doesn't die in heat, and it seems like it has been spiking since we have entered the summer months. So I'm not 100% sure, but our efforts have been to educate, and where we can't, especially when it pertains to the businesses, then we have to go to the next step in that process, and that would include noticing and going on into a citation. Again, our number one goal is to make sure that we gain compliance. And I know we get a lot of questions on are we responsible for customers not wearing a mask, or just our employees? For the business, it would be both the customers and the employees, and of course the owner themselves. And I know that's tough, especially if you're a restaurant and you're in the a hot kitchen and you have to wear a mask, and it is uncomfortable. No lie, I will not sugarcoat it, but that is part of the industry guidance that the business has committed themselves to doing and following, and that would include employees wearing a mask, and of course maintaining social distancing and that sort of thing. And I think that's pretty much all of the questions. Sandra, did you have any that maybe some were sent directly to you?
Yeah, it looks like that is all of the questions. So I will continue with just a few more closing remarks, and then we'll go back to the chat box in case anyone has any more questions, so they can join us here. So really quickly, Perfect. Well, thank you, Rodney, for this great presentation. And I would like to share that the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation currently has available personal protective equipment for small business owners. And this PPE has been made available to California small businesses through the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services in collaboration with the Office of the Small Business Advocate. So for more information, and if you need access to this PPE, please call our office at 222-8705, as our available supplies are limited. And I want to share that our next webinar will be on Tuesday, June 30 at 6 p.m. And this webinar will be in Spanish, and the focus is on the steps that an entrepreneur should take from an idea to venture. And this webinar, to sign up for this webinar, you can visit our website at fresnoahf.org/events. And it looks like we do have some questions here in the chat box. So I'm going to be checking in here. 1 second. Perfect. So Rodney, one of the question is, are masks and gloves preparing food? Are they, to prepare food, are they required? So I know you did mention about the mask, but what about the gloves?
There we go. I should stop muting myself. That's what I should do first. So that's a great question. I think mask and glove. I mean, there is no requirement, at least at this point, to wear gloves. As far as your employees that are not preparing food, but gloves are pretty much required if you're preparing food as industry standards. I understand. Mask and gloves are best. Gloves for sanitary purposes, just in general, and certainly a mask when you're preparing the food. Some It looks like Lorraine has said face shields are the best option for restaurant kitchens, and it looks like okay. It looks like that's all the questions there.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Rodney. And as a follow-up, I know you mentioned that there's a team of the code enforcement team that is in the community providing copies of the emergency order and then also supply of masks. And I know you did provide here the number. So basically, so have them call this number in order to get connected with the team.
Yes, yeah. If they have any questions about, code enforcement, our activity, certainly there's the 8400 number. If you wanted a copy of the emergency order, I think I put the city's website in there, and I'll copy and paste below just so everyone can get it. But it's fresno.gov/coronavirus, and so that will provide you with the most recent emergency order. As well as the Appendix A that will be required to be posted in a very visible place in the establishment.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ronnie, for your time and for answering all of these great questions to our small business owners. This concludes our presentation, and this presentation has been recorded, and so all participants will be receiving a copy.